keeps you spinning round.
Right, Vicky, you don't have an Instagram or anything, do you? Do you? Can you just see if that audio is coming through? I usually, Christopher. Hello, and if you can hear me, even if you can't, welcome to Live by the Socially Distant Firepit. This is session number 44 weeks in, and welcome back to the 9 p.m. slot time. If you've seen this before, it's cooler to start later for many reasons. And we're just gonna do a little audio check to make sure this is working. How you doing? Of course I can't hear a response. I can feel it. Hope you're well. Thank you for jumping on early. It's a nice and happy spring. It's a very nice, chilly, still of the winter leftover chill. But it was such a beautiful day here in Los Angeles. Nice, cloudy, overcast morning and a beautiful sunny afternoon and a nice chilly evening. Couldn't ask for more. So I'll just say before I start, I've been pushing this for the last couple weeks, but I did, if you haven't heard it already, I did just release my debut single as a solo artist, So Long Cecilia, and that is now out on all streaming services, Spotify and all that stuff. And please listen if you haven't. Please follow me there on Spotify too. That really helps us as artists get more plays, get the stuff around there, and like the song. And hell, if you feel like it, throw it on a playlist, because that actually helps a lot too, apparently, according to the all the webinars I've been attending. But so yes, let's carry on. This week for session number 44, we are celebrating, it's post St. Paddy's, celebration of Irish music and literature. So I am playing a song by the Pogues, the Waterboys, which, interesting story, they're not really completely Irish bands. They're actually all mixed. Both bands are a mix of like Irish, English, and Scottish. And I think both of them only have maybe one Irish member, but it is all Irish-inspired music, pop music with the influence of the traditional, which is a big thing for me. I love traditional Irish music and Celtic music, and as maybe the reason why I've just recently found out, not too recently, but in the last year, that I had no idea, but there's a fair portion of my genetics that come from Ireland. I mean, I guess anyone that's Caucasian or part Caucasian has Irish in them, as they say in fucking America. What's up, Mr. Roman? And thanks, and thank you for monitoring last minute. So here's to my roots in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and Glasgow, Scotland, by the way, Manchester, England. Here it is. This is the tribute. It all makes sense now why I like this stuff. Now it's just so. Here we go. Hope you're all safe and healthy, and had a great week and are enjoying your weekend. This is the Pogues, Down All the Days. Christy Brown, a clown around town, now a man of renown, from Dingle to Down. Get tight with me toes, suck stout through me nose. Where it's gonna end, God only knows. Down all the days. The tap, tap, tapping of the typewriter pays the gentle rattling of the trays. Down all the days. Often had to depend upon the kindliness of strangers. Never really asked and I never replied if I supported the Glasgow Rangers. Down all the days. The tap, tap, tapping of the typewriter pays the gentle rattling of the trays. Down all the days. Down all the days. The tap, tap, tapping of the typewriter pays the gentle rattling of the drays. Down all the days. Solanche with my official Guinness pint. And you know, the crappy thing is, like, you buy those little Guinness draft cans and they're not measured to the Queen's pint, so they come up about like an inch short. Bullshit. So here's to the real Irish pint. Solanche. And and also welcome to the first day of spring. If I'm doing an Irish tribute for post St. Paddy's Day and it's spring, I think this officially makes this an Irish spring set. Irish spring. Remember that? The soap, the bar soap commercials? It's Irish spring. It smells good. I like Irish spring, yeah. It's not bad at all. Yeah, and now available at the 99-cent store. So, and then to my right, I have a little Tullamore, some Tully-Do, and it's good stuff. Yeah, Jameson's just a little too fucking. It's just like too much sugar and it bites. It's nasty. Tullamore is a little more of what I like to say, the
Sophisticated.
The sophisticated poor gentleman's drink. So Solange to that. And thank you for joining me. This next song is by the Waterboys, and it's called A Bang on the Ear. I love this one too. I love them all. I love every single song I play, otherwise I wouldn't play it. So here we go. Lindsay was my girl, she was in my class. Would have loved to take her out, but I was too shy to ask. The fullness of my feelings was never made clear. But I'd send her my love and a bang on the ear. Nora was my girl when I was first in the group. Still can see her to this day, stirring chicken soup. Now she's living in Australia, working for an auctioneer. And I send her my love and a bang on the ear. Deborah broke my heart, and I, the willing fool, fell for her one summer on the road to Liverpool. Thought it was forever, but it was over within a year. But I sent her my love and a bang on the ear. I made with Bella became a house of pain. We weathered it together, bound by a ball and chain. Started up in fight, but it ended up in tears. But I sent her my love and a bang on the ear. Krista was a rover, from Canada she hailed. We crossed swords in San Francisco and both lived to tell the tale. Need a haircut. I don't know where she is now, but if I had her here, would I'd send her my love and a bang on the ear. dogs next door, ladies and gentlemen, making their appearance. And the hot rod on the other side, revving up its engine. Welcome to Northeast Los Angeles. And this was a very quiet part. And someone needs a new fan belt. Here we go. Last verse. It's a woman of my heart and fire, harbor of my soul. I watch you lightly sleeping, and the dream that does unfold. You to me are treasure, you to me are dear. So now I give you my love and a bang on the ear. Hey! Oh, no. So I give you my love and a bang on the ear. And I give you my love and a bang on the ear. So I give you my love, a bang on the ear. Yes. Thank you very much. And that was the Waterboys with a bang on the ear. And before that I played Down All the Days by the Pogues with the mighty Shane MacGowan. God bless his soul. He's still here. It's been struggling, it's been tough for him, but had the pleasure of the honor of seeing Shane MacGowan a couple times, and just what an amazing, creative, artistic, and musical soul. Solanche. And that was the Irish music tribute set with bands that are partially Irish, but inspired by the great sounds of the great green land of Ireland. And the great land of a great stout. My favorite winter stout. So I do this thing like, and good whiskey. I prefer Scotch, but in the winter and in the fall, I always like to drink like stouts, and Guinness obviously is like my number one. And I go to Scotch. And then during the spring, now we're transitioning here. Spring and summer, I like to move to like lighter beers, tequila, mezcal, and like Mexican beers. You know what I mean? Or like Japanese lagers. So that's the secret of my youth. We'll see how long that upholds. So I've got one last thing that I want to do for you tonight. And since we're celebrating great Irish creative hearts and minds, I want to read to you the last chapter, chapter 20, of Oscar Wilde's classic, The Picture of Dorian Gray. Spoiler alert, if you haven't read this book, you might want to turn away, because I'm reading the last chapter that gives away, that is like, you know, it's like the kicker of this whole book, of where Dorian Gray confronts his portrait that has been aging and kept him youthful, and then the whole crazy predicament happens. But it's a beautiful book if you haven't read. Very, very classic literature, obviously. Here we go. Let's just get to it. And cheers to the Irish. There's so many great Irish writers and musicians. There's so many. I just picked the ones that were kind of familiar to me, but there's so many. So to celebrate a land of great creativity. Chapter 20. It was a lovely night, so warm that he threw his coat over his arm and did not even put his silk scarf round his throat. As he strolled home, smoking his cigarette, two young men in evening dress passed him. He heard one of them whisper to the other, "That is Dorian Gray." He remembered how pleased he used to be when he was pointed out, or stared at, or talked about. He was tired of hearing his own name now. Half the charm of the little village where he had been so oft lately was that no one knew who he was. He had often told the girl whom he had lured to love him that he was poor, and she had believed him. He had told her once that he was wicked, and she had laughed at him and answered that wicked people were always very old and very ugly. What a laugh she had! Just like a thrush singing. And how pretty she had been in her cotton dresses and her large hats. She knew nothing, but she had everything that he had lost. When he reached home, he found his servant waiting up for him. He sent him to bed and threw himself down on the sofa in the library and began to think over some of the things that Lord Henry had said to him. Was it really true that one could never change? He felt a wild longing for the unstained purity of his boyhood, his rose-white boyhood, as Lord Henry had once called it. He knew that he had tarnished himself, filled his mind with corruption, and given horror to his fancy, that he had been an evil influence to others and had experienced a terrible joy in being so, and that of the lives that had crossed his own it had been the fairest and the most full of promise that he had brought to shame. But was it all irretrievable? Was there no hope for him? Ah! In what a monstrous moment of pride and passion he had prayed and that the portrait should bear the burden of his days and he keep the unsullied splendor of eternal youth. All his failure had been due to that. Better for him that each sin of his life had brought its sure, swift penalty along with it. There was purification in punishment, not forgive us our sins, but smite us for our... Sorry. It's really dark back here. Where was I? Let's start right here. There was purification in punishment, not forgive us for our sins, but smite us for our iniquities. Should be the prayer of man to a most just God. The curiously carved mirror that Lord Henry had given to him so many years ago now was standing on the table, and the white-limbed cupids laughed round as of old. He took it up, as he had done on that night of horror, when he had first noted the change in the fatal picture, and with wild, tear-dimmed eyes looked into its polished shield. Once, someone who had terribly loved him had written to him a mad letter, ending with these adulterous words: "The world is changed because you are made of ivory and gold. The curves of your lip rewrite history." The phrases came back to his memory, and he repeated them over and over to himself. Then he loathed his own beauty, and flinging the mirror on the floor, crushed it into silver splinters beneath its heel. It was his beauty that had ruined him, his beauty and the youth that he had prayed for. But for those two things his life may have been free from stain. His beauty had been to him but a mask, his youth but a mockery. What was youth at best? A green and unripe time? A time of shallow moods and sickly thoughts? Why had he worn its livery? Youth had spoiled him. It was better not to think of the past. Nothing could alter that. It was of himself and of his own future that he had to think. James Vane was hidden in a nameless grave in Selby churchyard. Alan Campbell had shot himself one night in his laboratory, but had not revealed the secret that he had been forced to know. The excitement, such as it was, over Basil Hallward's disappearance would soon pass away. It was already waning. He was perfectly safe there. Nor, indeed, was it the death of Basil Hallward that weighed most upon his mind. It was the living death of his own soul that troubled him. Basil had painted the portrait that had marred his life. He could not forgive him that. It was the portrait that had done everything. Basil had said things to him that were unbearable and that he had yet borne with patience. The murder had been simply the madness of a moment. As for Alan Campbell, his suicide had been his own act. He had chosen to do it. It was nothing to him. A new life. That was what he wanted. That was what he was waiting for. Surely he had begun it already. He had spared one innocent thing at any rate. He would never again tempt innocence. He would be good. As he thought of Hetty Merton, he began to wonder if the portrait in the locked room had changed. Surely it was not still so horrible as it had been. Perhaps, if his life became pure, he would be able to expel every sign of evil passion from the face. Perhaps the signs of evil had already gone away. He would go and look. He took the lamp from the table and crept upstairs. As he unbarred the door, a smile of joy flitted across his strangely young-looking face and lingered for a moment about his lips. Yes, he would be good, and the hideous thing that he had hidden away would no longer be a terror to him. He felt as if the load had been lifted from him already. He went in quietly, locking the door behind him, as was his custom, and dragged the purple hanging from the portrait. A cry of pain and indignation broke from him. He could see no change, save in the eyes that there was a look of cunning, and in the mouth the curved wrinkle of a hypocrite. The thing was still loathsome, more loathsome, if possible, than before, when the scarlet dew that had spotted the hand seemed brighter, and more like blood newly spilt. Then he trembled. Had it been merely vanity that had made him do his own good deed, or the desire for a new sensation, as Lord Henry had hinted, with his mocking laugh, or that passion to act a part of this that sometimes makes us do things finer than we are ourselves, or perhaps all of these? And why was the red stain larger than it had been? It had seemed to creep like a horrible disease over the wrinkled fingers. There was blood, even on the hand that had not held the knife. Confess? Did it mean that he was to confess? To give himself up? And be put to death? He laughed. He felt the idea was monstrous. Besides, even if he did confess, who would believe him? There was no trace of the murdered man anywhere. Everything belonging to him had been destroyed. He himself had burned what had been below stairs. The world would simply say that he was mad. They would shut him up if he persisted in his story. Yet, it was his duty to confess, to suffer his story. And to make public atonement. There was a God who called upon men to tell their sins to earth as well as to heaven. Nothing that he could do would cleanse him till he had told his own sin. His sin? He shrugged his shoulders. The death of Basil Hallward seemed very little to him. He was thinking of Hetty Merton. For it was an unjust mirror, the mirror of his soul that he was looking at. Vanity? Curiosity? Hypocrisy? Had there been nothing more in his renunciation than that? There had been something more, at least he thought so. But who could tell? No. There had been nothing more. Through vanity, he had spared her. In hypocrisy, he had worn the mask of goodness. For curiosity's sake, he tried the denial of self. He recognized that now. But this murder, was it to dog him all his life? Was he always to be burdened by his past? Was he really to confess? Never. There was only one bit of evidence left against him, the picture itself. That was evidence. He would destroy it. Why had he kept it so long? Once it given him pleasure to watch it changing and growing old. Of late he had felt no such pleasure. It had kept him awake at night when he had been away. He had been filled with terror lest other eyes should look upon it. It had brought melancholy across his passions. Its mere memory had marred many moments of joy. It had been like conscience to him. Yes, it had been conscience. He would destroy it. He looked around. He saw the knife he had stabbed Basil Hallward. He had cleaned it many times till there was no stain left upon it. It was bright and glistened. As it had killed the painter, so it would kill the painter's work and all that it meant. It would kill the past, and when that was dead, he would be free. It would kill this monstrous soul life, and without its hideous warnings, he would be at peace. He seized the thing and stabbed the picture with it. He looked round. Oh, where am I? There was a cry heard, and a crash. The cry was so horrible in its agony that the frightened servants woke and crept out of their rooms. Two gentlemen who were passing in the square below stopped and looked up at the great house. They walked on till they met a policeman and brought him back. The man rang the bell several times, but there was no answer, except for two dogs barking next door. Except for a light in one of the top windows. The house was all dark. After a time, he went away and stood in adjoining portico and watched. "Whose house is that, constable?" asked the elder of the two gentlemen. "Mr. Dorian Gray, sir," answered the policeman. They looked at each other as they walked away and sneered. One of them was Sir Henry Ashton's uncle. Inside, in the servants' part of the house, the half-clad domestics were talking in a low whisper to each other. Old Mrs. Leaf was crying and wringing her hands. Francis was as pale as death. After about a quarter of an hour, he got the coachman and one of the footmen and crept upstairs. They knocked, but there was no reply. They called out. Everything was still. Finally, after vainly trying to force the door, they got on the roof and dropped down on the balcony. The windows yielded easily. Their bolts were old. When they entered, they found hanging upon the wall a splendid portrait of their master, as they had last seen him, in all the wonder of his exquisite youth and beauty. Lying on the floor was a dead man, in evening dress, with a knife in his heart. He was withered, wrinkled, and loathsome of visage. It was not till they examined the rings that they recognized who it was. And that was chapter 20 of Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray, a great Irish writer, a great writer in general. And this was Live by the Socially Distant Firepit, week and session number 44. Those are the dogs next door. They are here with me every week. And yeah, thank you for joining me. I've had a splendid time playing the Pogues down all the days and the Water Boys. I'll bang on the ear and reading to you. chapter 20 of the picture of Dorian Gray. I'm, as always, going to enjoy this fire with my good friend Rick Garcia, who's here, and of course Christopher Roman, always helping me on the tech end. And I will see you next week. Join me next week. I'm not sure what's going to happen or what I'm going to play, but there is a special surprise that Rick Garcia is a part of. And we are doing something that's a surprise to me. It's kind of a birthday surprise, so I'm really excited to see what he has in store and that we're going to apply it to next week's Firepit session. So thank you.
Inspired by Mama Roman. Her birthday's tomorrow.
Ah, yes. And Mrs. Roman, Mama Roman, happy birthday. Your birthday is tomorrow. Thank you for the firewood, by the way. It is burning, obviously, very nice. So,
Smells great.
and it smells great, that cedar. Love it. Mixed with the pine. We know our firewood back here. Good night, everyone.
Keeps you spinning